The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. Ghost to base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media, April 21st, 2026. And this is episode 100, apparently. It's hard to believe. Yeah, so I hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday. Plenty to discuss, so we will jump right into it. If I can get the mouse to click. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, there's a lot going on. I've done a couple shows the past 24 hours, so I've been able to talk about some of it. I'll try my best not to be as repetitive or redundant as I can. Some of it is necessary. Yeah, and I mean the big story, in my opinion, I think like one of the bigger stories that just is going to be symbolic of everything that's happening right now, or and the real struggle that I think is happening right now, I should say. The struggle against empire, which I think is the crux of really what we're covering here at Badlands, is the destruction of the Jesus statue. Here's an op-ed from the Times of Israel. Destruction of Jesus statue should serve as a moral wake-up call for the IDF in Israel. There's the before-after. On Sunday, an image of an Israeli soldier operating in Lebanon spread rapidly across social media. It so perfectly encapsulated some of the worst tropes about Israel and Jews that many instinctively assumed it was an AI-generated product meant to slander the Jewish state. Friends of Israel who thought the photograph might be real prayed it wasn't, so damaging was the picture. Their prayers went unanswered. An IDF soldier had indeed taken a hammer to the face of a statue depicting Jesus in the Christian town of Debel, in Southern Lebanon. There was no AI, no manipulation, no getting around an image that points to a deep moral morass in the IDF and in broader Israeli society. It is hard to think of an image that could be more damaging to Israel on the world stage right now. The emergent quote-unquote woke right in the U.S., led by figures like Tucker Carlson, contends that Jews are enemies of Christians who are persecuted by Israelis in the Holy Land. Carlson has devoted multiple episodes of his popular podcast to speaking with local Christian figures about hardships imposed by Jerusalem. The movement is working hard to convince Christian Zionists, the backbone of America's support for Israel, that Israelis harbor a not-so-secret disdain for Christians and that their natural allies are the Palestinians. Meanwhile, on the other side of the political spectrum, Israel is cast as a uniquely cruel fighting force going out of its way to destroy homes, lives, and religious sites. All this is done with a bizarre glee by IDF forces, say anti-Israel social media figures. And of course, there is the millennia-old charge of deicide, that Jews collectively bear eternal guilt for the death of Jesus on the cross. That accusation, which has led to the death of untold thousands of Jews, has been adapted in Palestinian liberation theology, which recasts Israeli soldiers as the Romans and Palestinians as their victim, Jesus. What better evidence could all of those camps ask for than a photo of a broken figure of Jesus torn off the cross and hanging upside down as an emotionless Israeli soldier smashes him with a hammer? The same army that killed tens of thousands in Gaza and struck the only Catholic church in the territory, those critics can now say is going out of its way to desecrate images of Jesus as it systematically destroys southern Lebanon as well. As Jerusalem and Beirut wade into unprecedented peace talks, Israel has gone to great lengths to insist that its fight is with Hezbollah and its Shia strongholds, not the Maronite communities in southern Lebanon that have worked with Israel since before its independence. But the image of the soldier destroying infrastructure in a Christian town and a statue of Jesus that would seem to directly contradict the contention that Israel is not targeting Christians as well. Yeah, so I'm not going to continue. I'm not going to read the whole op-ed. I think this is well written. I think this is well argued. Who's this? This is Lazar Bierman. I've seen that name before in some of these articles. I think that's a pretty fair framing for the most part. That of it's acknowledgement that this photograph is significant, that it's symbolic, that it's going to become a symbol, and a representation, a snapshot of like this moment in time. Now, if Israel were to negotiate peace with all of its enemies right now, like a real peace, a peace that actually sustained itself, it were to pull back all of its forces, retain its original border, sign a two-state solution with Palestine, restore the borders to the 1967 conditions as has been requested or demanded really by Saudi Arabia, and then just normalize with everybody, adopt a secular political system, and abandon like the Jewish Empire agenda. Then yeah, I think this becomes a chapter in a dark chapter in a history of a country, right? Much like the way people view the Third Reich with Germany, right? I don't think that's how this is going to go, though. And again, I think a lot of this is the pieces that are in place, why they're in place, how they got into place, and their incentive structures moving forward. A big part of analysis, in my opinion, geopolitical analysis, at least as I approach it, is understanding incentive structures, understanding, what are the motivations that drive people to, not people, but the individuals, the television characters, the cartoon character, the television characters to do what they're doing. Now, a lot of them have ulterior motives and are maybe even controlled by other, unseen forces, but they still have like an incentive structure that they have demonstrated through a pattern of behavior where you can start to identify what it is that they're going to do. Lindsey Graham is kind of the cartoonish example where he wants war. He wants war with pretty much any country there is. So that's obviously in homage to his friends in the defense industry. Probably his donors. But he also wants the Jewish Israeli empire, the Greater Israel Project, to be sustained and to be pursued. And that's, of course, his homage to his friends or handlers or whatever in the diaspora, not just in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, but I think the diaspora is an international thing of the Jewish oligarchs, international network rather. So once you understand what Lindsey Graham's incentive structure is, it's kind of easy to predict how he's going to react to certain events, right? When there's discussion of war breaking out somewhere in the world and the opportunity for the United States to intervene, like there's an incentive for the United States to intervene one way or the other, he's going to push for the United States to intervene kinetically. That's typically what he does. So you take that same idea and you kind of start to apply it to every other figure, and then you kind of map it all out. That's how at least I approach the analysis of this and understanding what is going to happen next. It's just understanding the incentives, right? Understanding the motives, and then just recognizing the story for what it is, and then the actuals of what's actually happening on the ground becomes less important, rather than the story that's being told and being forwarded by all these different television characters and entities who are interested in entities. Because again, the story becomes a weapon, right? The war is a story. The story is a war. Burning Bright's narrative mantra, I think that's very accurate. So if we take this and we apply it to Bibi Netanyahu, as we've gone through many times on this show, his motivation right now, I think his motivation is just to stay alive, right? And by alive, I don't mean literally, I mean stay alive politically, remain in power, don't allow the Knesset to collapse around him, the support in the Knesset to collapse around him, make it to the October election, right? Don't allow the Knesset to collapse before that. And then of course, win the public mandate to remain in office. Now, the incentive to do that immediately in the immediate future is, of course, the criminal cases that are pending against him, which are going to resume the minute he gets out of office. They keep giving him continuances. There was supposed to be a hearing a week or two ago. He asked for a continuance. They gave it to him, and they're going to keep giving it to him because they're not going to put the prime minister on trial until there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? As far as the courts are concerned, he's going to be out of office at some point, and that's when they'll pursue that case. The bigger ambition, the bigger incentive for Netanyahu, in my opinion, is I think he is a messianic figure. I think he has a Messiah complex. I think he sees himself as a secular Messiah for Israel, and that doesn't necessarily have to be grounded in religion. I mean, I think it is. I think there's a religious, spiritual aspect to it where he's been told by a lot of very powerful, influential people that that's his job, is to establish this empire for the coming of the Jewish Messiah. But I also think that could be a secular, incentive, because ego, like if he just wants to be the guy, if he just wants to be the George Washington of Greater Israel, right, where 500 years from now they're talking about this guy who established this great empire like Cyrus the Great, there's that element of it too. So I think all of those incentives are going to have Netanyahu, in my opinion, plowing forward for war. He can't afford to negotiate peace. He can afford to make peace one conflict at a time, because he has a 7-front war, as he describes it. So he can make peace with one conflict while the 6 other conflicts are pushing forward, or he can make peace in 3 conflicts while 4 conflicts are pushing forward, etc. Knowing that those ceasefires that he's signing are going to be violated at some point, and that's a convenient, that gives time for the IDF to pull off that one front and reallocate resources, for strategic purposes, logistical purposes. So those are the games that I think Netanyahu has been playing this entire time. Now, the people around him have a similar incentive structure. You have Itamar Ben-Gvir, you have Bezalel Smotrich, you have Israel Katz. For those who are new here, I will show you the chart that I've created for Netanyahu's cabinet. But these people are Jewish extremists. They are Jewish supremacists, followers of Meir Kahane. And what that means is that they they have an ethnic supremacy worldview where they think that anyone who's not Jewish is basically second class to them. Um, and they have a view that is grounded in religion somewhat, um, in Talmudic Judaism, that their job, it's their duty, like they've been tasked by God as the chosen people to establish order in the world and basically be kind of like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They are Adam, right? We are the animals in the garden, and it's their job to manage all of us and to um, yeah, basically to manage everybody else. That's what the Noahide laws that Ben Shapiro was talking about the other day is all about. So they want to pursue this empire because they think that it's the righteous thing to do in their mind, even if there are sacrifices that have to be made in the intermediary. That is, those are sacrifices that they're willing to make and that are worth making. Here's the cabinet. So again, Israel Katz, Minister of Defense, Bezalel Smotrich, Minister of Finance, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Minister of National Security. Those three I can definitively say are Kahanists. Some of these other people may be Kahanists as well, although I don't think they are. Gideon Sar, I don't think he's a Kahanist as far as I know, but he is pro-Israeli settlement. He's pro-expansion. He's pro-war with Iran. So he's definitely a warmonger. And so again, it's like these people have overlapping incentives. They have overlapping ambitions and desires. And the three that I just mentioned, Gideon Sar is somebody who was a politician before this specific Netanyahu government emerged in late December 2022, early 2023. Gideon Sar will probably continue to be a political figure, even if after Netanyahu's demise, whenever that demise occurs. These other people, though, probably won't. Like Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel Katz, I think they'll probably continue to get elected to the Knesset, but they, from from the little settlements that are all over the place. But if this government collapses tomorrow, they're not getting appointed to these positions probably ever, but anytime soon. I can't imagine that these Kahanists are going to be brought back in because, again, the prevailing opinion, I think, or not prevailing, but the opinion that's emerging is that in the calculus of all of this is that these guys are damaging the reputation of Israel internationally, as that op-ed just spelled out, and they're a liability. And they're also, by the way, a convenient scapegoat. Like if everything can be pinned on them, and this is all Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir's fault, so we're going to kick them out, cast them aside. This is a new Israel you're dealing with now, right? When the new administration comes in, whenever that happens, there's that opportunity for the opportunistic politicians and operatives to make, to use that attack vector. But the question is okay, so what do they do after that? Like, are they going to pursue a more reasonable agenda? And at this point, I'm not sure that they are. A few years ago, yeah, it's like they're not going to tip over the apple cart, so to speak, just to get a few more apples. But one thing that revisionist Zionism, and that's what this is, a concept that was developed, I believe, by Zeev Jabotinsky in the 1920s, 1930s. Revisionist Zionism, which is establish this empire, and then the Messiah will come. What every politician and every Rebbe and rabbi in Israel has always said for many, many years, because they've been asked this from time to time. They get asked, okay, so how does this happen? Like, how does this kingdom come into be? How does this empire come into be? And they've always said, we don't advocate for violence. We don't advocate for a military campaign. We trust that God is going to somehow give this to us. Basically saying, somebody else will do this, somebody else, but I'm not going to sully my reputation by being, the bloodthirsty warmonger. So I'm just going to say, in God we trust, and God will somehow give us the kingdom. I think right now they view this opportunity. A lot of those people who would say something like that view this opportunity, this invasion in Lebanon, the invasion in Syria, the war with Iran. This is God providing. This is God providing an opportunity to expand this empire. And this is God's will. And so therefore they have to seize this opportunity and parlay it into a larger country and an expanded empire. And you've heard the rhetoric from Netanyahu is that he wants Israel to become a world power. I would argue that it's always been a world power because it has considerable resources in regards to intelligence and political leverage and the Jewish diaspora and all of that. But it's had to operate, I think, in the shadows for the most part, behind the scenes, and it wants to operate more out in the open, and kind of flex its own power projection, the same way the United States has. I think that's what Netanyahu sees as the end game for Israel when he talks about this stuff in public. He talks about becoming a world power. Well, that tiny country that it currently is not going to be able to become a world power because it doesn't have the natural resources. It doesn't have the land, the geography. It doesn't have the farmland. It doesn't have the ability to support itself or sustain itself. It's very, very much dependent on other countries and imports. So what do? Well, you expand the country and you get more land and you get more resources. And by doing that, that's how you, I think, become a world power. And to that point, in the news brief yesterday, I mentioned this on Badlands Daily this morning, but we can kind of run back through this a little bit. This map is the new map that the IDF has put out. The IDF has declared this their forward defense zone as of April 19th. You can see that they have established everywhere you see a triangle. Let me see if I can open this up in a better window. And then maybe I can get the layout like this. There we go. Get a little bigger. All right. So there we go. These black triangles, these are new military bases. You can see down here in the in the legend. These are IDF bases that have been established in Lebanon. So these are on the Lebanese side of the border, the old border, which is the blue and white line. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, as of right now, military bases that they've established in Lebanon. And then this new red line is the forward defense zone, which I expect will expand in time. Now they are moving up in the Northeast, which is something that we've speculated on this show. I've speculated is what we're going to see happen. I think this is called the Hasbani River. This is a river valley right here. In the border between Syria and Lebanon right here is Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is, I've circled it here in this other image. Maybe I can open this in another. There we go. All right, so this shows the like the topography. All right, so you can see Mount Hermon is the high point right here in the middle of this mountain range of this range of mountains right here. It's the highest point in the Eastern Mediterranean, like on the coast of the Eastern Mediterranean, everywhere from the Sinai Peninsula up to Turkey. This is the high point along the coast. So very strategic. It has a lot of strategic value. Hezbollah's obviously used it. And it overlooks Damascus. So if you're going to take Damascus, holding this high ground is a very, very good way. Look, that's a good stepping stone to getting Damascus. You can see this break because the mountains pick back up over here off the screen in the Northeast. There's like a little relief, almost like the Cumberland Gap in Appalachia between West Virginia and Ohio. There's a break in the mountains, and that's where they have the road that connects Damascus to Lebanon. And it's a road that's very heavily used by Hezbollah to move back and forth between Syria and Lebanon as they were fighting to defend Assad for 15 years while they were fighting ISIS in the Syrian civil war. I think taking control of that gap and shutting down that access point so that there can't be, you can no longer easily traverse between Syria and Lebanon. I have to think that's a major objective of this campaign. But again, taking Mount Hermon is I think the natural progression to get there. And then, of course, if you're going to try to take the coastline here, Tyre and Sidon, and, having this high ground is going to be very, very beneficial. And of course, if you cut straight across and take the coast, then you can flank, you can close your flank here on Tyre. So, yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at a situation that is expansionism, is the expansion of empire. And again, I think when we talk about the sovereign alliance, what we are talking about is the struggle against empire. This is a physical, literal manifestation of the idea of establishing an empire, expanding an empire, right? Not something that we've seen done in centuries, really. We haven't seen like an empire emerge and try to physically expand its borders, right, for quite some time. But if you think about the metaphysical, if you think about the globalists, right, you think about the World Economic Forum, you think about the levers of power, the different the apparatuses that were used to control different governments, to impose top-down rules, Agenda 2030, all that kind of stuff, the Great Reset, all of it. That is an empire, right? And I think with the Sovereign Alliance, as we have described it and as we have laid out, what that represents is a rebellion against that, a counterinsurgency against that insurgency, that the World Economic Forum, the globalists, whatever you want to call it, that is an insurgency against the natural order of humanity, right? The natural order of how people organize themselves is this top-down empire. And so this collection of sovereign-minded nations that want to have self-determination and seek its own, and seize their own destiny, and not have a ruler from the top down telling them what to do and telling them what they can and can't do. That's what I think is the incentive structure that established the Sovereign Alliance. And so when we talk about the Sovereign Alliance and this conflict between this empire, this hegemony, right, this unipolar hegemony as it's been described, and against this multipolar hegemony that is trying to emerge, a lot of that has been political, a lot of that has been metaphysical, a lot of it has been ideas, like a conflict of ideas, right? And then that begins to manifest itself into trade deals, into security deals, into military alliances. But ultimately, I think that at some point it has to manifest into a physical, something physical, right? I mean, eventually this morass of terrible ideas that I think the globalist deep state represents spews out a physical manifestation, like a personification of its ideas. And I think we saw that first in 2022 in Ukraine. I think that's one manifestation of it, right? I think this in Israel is another one. I think this is another manifestation, and just coincidentally, it's all connected. Like these things all seem to be connected, Israel and Ukraine. And so to that point, maybe let's start there. So one of the things that we talked about, okay, well, before we actually go there, here's a story that I think that I just saw pop up on the Times of Israel. This is Independence Day, I believe, was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. It's like Israel's Independence Day. And it says at Independence Day ceremony, Knesset speaker hails Israel's superpower level capabilities. Israel has demonstrated rare and superpower level capabilities in fighting its enemies. Knesset speaker Amir Ohana declares at Israel's official 78th Independence Day with torch lighting ceremony on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. Quote, we acted over the past year in general and in the most recent operation in particular to fight our enemies wherever they are. He says, those who plotted to destroy us were destroyed. Those who planned to kill us were killed. Those who sought to annihilate us were annihilated. The state of Israel has demonstrated superpower level capabilities reserved for only a few countries on earth. What does victory look like? This is what victory looks like. Ohana declares to cheers from the crowd. Quote, when all the names that threatened Israeli citizens for many years have been eliminated and replaced once, twice, and 3 times, that is what victory looks like. When Israeli ingenuity turned imaginary scenarios into bold reality deep within enemy territory, that is what victory looks like. By the way, what he's describing right there in that sentence is the expansion of empire. Imaginary ideas, dreams of a greater Israel are now being realized. All right, so back to the quote. When over the past year in the midst of war, 20,000 Jews chose to immigrate to Israel, that is what victory looks like, he continues, adding that the mission is not yet over and we must continue to fight. So that kind of rah, like, you know, you could call it nationalism. Like it certainly is nationalism. It's a lot more than that. But that is that spirit, like that energy that he is putting out there that is being well received by the crowd, according to this article. That is what keeps Netanyahu in office, because who is responsible for all of this? Well, Netanyahu is. He's the one who manifested all of this. So as long as the victories continue to pile up and the victories continue to compound, as he is describing it, the optics of that, I think, gives Netanyahu the mandate to stay in power. The minute that gets reversed, though, and this whole thing collapses in on itself, which may or may not happen, but it certainly looks like it's going to happen at some point. The minute that this whole thing gets rug pulled, that's where I think all the finger pointing is going to start, right? Because there's going to be retribution and consequence against the country of Israel. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. Like the government of Israel, like potentially is going to be held accountable by at least certain people, certain members of the international community. Certain governments are going to want there to be consequence. What that consequence looks like is hard to say, but they're not just going to say, oh yeah, let's just let bygones be bygones. Like you know, tit for tat, like you captured all this territory and killed all these people, whatever. Like we're just going to move on. I don't think that's what's going to happen. And so Israel's going to need a scapegoat. And that's where I think Netanyahu and his regime become the scapegoat. So this is very much an existential fight, in my opinion, for Netanyahu and the people around him. I think this is existential. They're past the point of no return. And they have to finish, you know, they've swum halfway across the river. They can't turn around and go back. They got to finish swimming across the river. And that's what is being described here by the Knesset speaker, speaker of the Knesset, speaker of the House, whatever they call it. Okay. And so then that can take us to this article. So we did talk about this on Badlands Daily. I'll just touch on it real quick. Mossad agent Mim, who died in 2023, contributed to Iran war success. Spy chief reveals agent was on a boat that capsized in Italy's Lake Maggiore during a reported meeting between Israeli and Italian spies. A Mossad agent who died in an apparent boat accident in Italy in May 2023 led operations that contributed to Israel's recent successes against Iran. Spy Chief David Barnea said Tuesday the agent, identifiable only by the first Hebrew letter of his name, Mim, was among 4 people who drowned when a boat capsized in Italy's Lake Maggiore. At the time, he was named by Italian media as 50-year-old Erez Shimona, which is believed to be an alias. His real identity was not officially publicized, but is publicly available on the official Israeli memorial sites. On this day, Barnea said during a Memorial Day ceremony at Mossad headquarters, I think about the fallen Mossad members and their choice to contribute over the years to Israel's security. Quote, during Operation Roaring Lion, my thoughts and heart were filled with pride in the person and work of Mim, who fell outside of Israel while fulfilling his duties, he said, referring to the recent war with Iran. The operation led by Mim, this is another quote, combined creativity, cunning, and advanced technology and significantly influenced the success of the campaign against Iran, Barnea said. Italian media reported at the time that the gathering where he died was a working meeting of intelligence agents. According to the reports, 19 out of the 23 people on board were serving or past Israeli and Italian agents. Italy's security service said that two of the dead, a 62-year-old man and a 53-year-old woman, and there's a picture of the boat that sank, were its employees. Mim's body was transported back to Israel for burial at Ashkelon's military cemetery. Senior Mossad officials, including Barnea, were at the funeral. Quote, he was a man of values, a true friend, dedicated and loyal person. Barnea said at the funeral, you worked in secret throughout your adult life. Even after your death, we will not be able to tell publicly about your many significant and beneficial actions for the people of Israel, for all of us, he said. He praised him in specializing in pioneering fields and methods of operation. Claudio Carminati, the captain of the Guduria tour boat, was sentenced to 4 years in a plea deal over the deaths of his passengers. When it sank, the boat was carrying 23 passengers when it could only legally hold 15. The captain's wife was among the dead. The boat was reportedly just 100 meters from the shore when it went down. Survivors were reportedly either picked up by other watercraft or swam ashore. 10 other Israelis were reportedly on the vessel and were said to have been quickly flown back to Israel on a private jet known to be used by Israeli authorities. And so that here's the original article from May of 2023, May 31st, 2023. Israel retired, and this is what's interesting. So the way Barnea just described this guy is that he was in Italy working on behalf of Mossad, doing the good work of the agency, right? Like he was an active agent. Well, back in 2023, the way it was reported in Israeli media, because here's the Times of Israel article, it says retired Mossad agent still devoted to state security died on a capsized boat. And the prime minister's office says impossible to elaborate on dedicated service of Orez Shimoni, who was one of the 14 people who drowned on Italy's Lake Maggiore. Body returned to Israel. And so I'm not gonna recap, like repeat what we just read through. I just want to see if there's anything else. So it says Corriere della Sera on Wednesday quoted Carminati, that's the captain, as saying, quote, it was 30 seconds and then the apocalypse came. The boat immediately capsized and we fell into the water. He insisted that there was no prior warning that the weather would turn bad. I heard desperate shouts for help and many people swimming in the freezing water. A witness, Franco Laura, was quoted as saying by the Daily Mail. Media outlets were also delving into the supposed activities of the people on board the boat, with some outlets suggesting the official claim of a birthday party was covering up an operational meeting between Israeli and Italian intelligence agents. Italy's security service has admitted that two of the dead, a 62-year-old man and a 53-year-old woman, were its employees. Quote, the two employees belonging to the intelligence department were taking part in a convivial meeting organized to celebrate the birthday of one of the group, it said in a statement. The Corriere della Sera, a daily newspaper, reported Tuesday that the gathering was a working meeting of intelligence agents. The newspaper said the Israelis had not initially planned to board the boat, but did so after a meeting they were participating in went longer than expected, and they missed their flight home. According to reports, 19 out of the 23 people on board were serving or past Israeli and Italian agents. It was an opportunity to exchange information between agents of the two countries. La Stampa reported 10 other Israelis were reportedly on the cruise and were said to have been quickly flown back to Israel in a private jet. Yeah, we know that. Flight tracking sites showed the plane set off from Tel Aviv on Monday morning, arriving in Milan airport, and soon set back off to Ben Gurion airport. They reportedly did not wait to return the rented cars they were using during the trip. Yeah, and so, like, again, this is just a lot of speculation, but speculating what this was. I guess the official story is that, like, a terrible storm rolled in and very quickly and capsized the boat. That seems a little goofy. It seems like maybe there was some foul play here. But if Italy is saying of these 32 people, so the official reports are of the 23 people, 19 of them were spooks, either Israeli or Italian, and either current or retired. Israel is saying, Italy says that only 2 of those people were its employees. They don't specify whether anybody there was retired. But I think when you look at, where is it? Let me see if I can find that. When you look at this article, and there's a number of these that came out at this time. So this is Bank Info Security. It was a website. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but private. This is again from October 29th, 2024. So almost a year and a half after this boat sinks. Private firm accessed Italian government database, according to prosecutors. Foreign Minister Tajani condemns conspiracy as a threat to democracy. The foreign minister of Italy condemned as a threat to democracy the private investigation firm that prosecutors in Milan say illegally accessed government databases for years to assemble illicit dossiers. 4 individuals are under house arrest, including former super cop Carmine Gallo, who Italian public broadcaster Rai said Monday housed a secret archive of paper documents and IT equipment in a garage owned by his secretary. Police also seized, pull up that article. Police also seized a server located in Lithuania. Milan prosecutors said Equalize, the private investigation firm headed by Gallo, may have obtained data on 800,000 individuals from a police investigations database. Reuters reported that Equalize from 2019 through March, this would be March 2024. Yeah, I'm assuming they mean March 2024. Sorry, I just lost my place. Tapped into 3 key databases. One that monitored suspicious financial activities. That is notable. Like, that should be like, let's circle, underline, and bold that one. That was one database. A second database was a national tax agency system housing citizens' bank transactions. That's another one. Bold, circle, underline that. So tracking citizen bank transactions, utility bills, and income statements. And then the third database was police investigations database. The quote is, "This is unacceptable. We have been saying it for a long time. Spying on people's private lives and then using the information for economic or political purposes is really a threat to democracy." Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said at an event on Sunday. Prosecutors allege that Equalize had high-level support inside Italian and foreign intelligence services and Italian organized crime. Employees were expected to have contacts in police forces and public agencies through which they could obtain data. Members of the political opposition and the conservative government of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on Monday called for a parliamentary inquiry and demanded to know if evidence exists of government involvement. One arrestee is Nunzio Somalia Samuele Calamucci, described by Corriere della Sera as the mastermind behind the quote-unquote beyond database Equalize created for its allegedly illegally obtained data. Calamucci allegedly created a backdoor ensuring access into the police database, the Milan newspaper reported. It is also said that Calamucci went online by the handle SIM. All right, that's the same. That's SEM. That's the exact same code name that David Barnea gave to the guy he was talking about in his, speech, and may have been part of the anonymous hacking collective. Newswire Agenzia Nazionale Stampa Associata reported that authorities said Calamucci had at least 15 terabytes of illicitly collected data. Data sold by the firm was allegedly used to blackmail businessmen and politicians using former Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi and including former Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi and Senate President Ignazio La Russa. Dozens of individuals are under investigation for their role in the spying scandal, including Leonardo Maria Del Vecchio, chief strategy officer of multinational eyewear giant Essilor Luxottica, that investigators are probing multiple contacts between Del Vecchio's family office executives and Equalize staff in 2023. A Alessior Luxottica, sorry, that's a mouthful. It's an eyewear company. Spokesman told the Financial Times that Del Vecchio has the full support of the company. The Italian data scandal comes just weeks after authorities arrested an employee at Italy's biggest bank, Intesa Sanpaolo, for allegedly accessing data, including that of the country's prime minister and her family. So again, like the big takeaway from that report, this is again October 2024, is the back door. Like when they describe, oh, there was a back door that was installed in the database of of the Italian intelligence agency, and then that through the back door is how they were stealing all this data, and then they were putting it into this new database that they had created that they called Beyond, right? Taking these three existing databases. One of them, of course, is the suspicious. One is the monitoring database, like when somebody does something suspicious in banking, they compile all those activities, they put them in a database, right? That was one database, suspicious financial activities. Another one was a tax agency system that showed all the bank transactions, utility bills, income statements for everyone, I assume in Italy. And then the last one was the police investigation database. They compiled all this into this server they called Beyond. That's, I think, what they seized, what the Italian authorities have seized. And what's interesting is if you go back to the story of this boat sinking, they describe the Italian government admits that at least two of the people were their employees. There may have been other people on there that were, retired employees, former employees. But when you think about what does it require as a Mossad agent, what does it require to get access to this information, this database? Well, you're going to need friends in the Italian government. So like maybe like a retired inside and outside the Italian government. So they go to this Equalize firm, which is a firm that is created and staffed by former Italian intelligence agents, right? And then they have contacts inside the Italian government, right? They have these people who are working inside, active employees who would have access to the servers. And then apparently they had politicians that were blackmailed, right? They listed the former Italian, what was it? The Italian prime minister. I think it said that it was the Italian prime minister in the, let me see, it was Renzi. Yeah, so it was the Italian prime minister, Matteo Renzi, and Senate president Ignazio La Russa. So they have the president and the prime minister of Italy, the former president and prime minister, blackmailed, right? Using this data that they had stolen from this. So now again, let's wrap all that up, put a nice bow on it, because I'm going to connect this to what we're talking about today. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up this other article. Of Italy arresting 4 Mossad agents, because what ends up happening is they go and they arrest these guys. They arrest the Equalize people, right? But then they also arrested, this is the Italian authorities, they also arrested Mossad agents. So here's the Jerusalem Post. Mossad agents allegedly bought info. This is the exact same story they're talking about. This is just being reported in the Jerusalem Post, similar date, right? October 30th, 2024. Now, this is 6 days after that other report. The other report came off of a bank security, like this article that we were just looking at. This came off of a bank info security. So this is like a, I don't even know. Like this is some kind of a banking security company or something or other. I don't know, but their interest in publishing this article was the fact that the data that was being stolen was all related to banking and financial transactions, right? So then a week later, we get this article from Jerusalem Post that focuses more on like the politics of it, the people involved. Mossad agents allegedly bought info on Russia from Italian firm marred in snooping scandal. The hack for hire scandal has been rocking Italian politics and public opinion for days. And so it says Israeli agents allegedly from Mossad sought to buy information from a private Italian firm that has been illegally snooping into the lives of politicians, public officials, and sports and media personalities for years, according to Italian police documents quoted by the media on Tuesday. The hack for hire scandal has been rocking Italian politics and public opinion for days since the local prosecutors unveiled the illicit operations and arrested several people over the weekend, including that Calamucci guy. The police and prosecutors produced thousands of pages documenting phone calls, meetings, and evidence collected in the office of Equalize, a Milan-based company. So Equalize is based in Milan. And from what I can gather from all of this, the guys who work at Equalize, who are all former Italian intelligence, they're the ones who put the back door in. They're the ones who have gathered up all this data, and then they're selling the data to people. My guess, this is just pure speculation, but based on everything I've read about Mossad, how it operates, how it likes to use proxies, and it doesn't, if it can avoid being directly involved, it will avoid being directly involved. My guess is that these guys were probably all working for Mossad. They all were somehow, obviously they were selling data to Mossad, but I think it was probably deeper than that. I wouldn't be surprised if Mossad is the one who put them up to this, because the techniques that they're using, the means and methods that they're using is like identical to the playbook that Mossad ran in the 1980s with the Promise software. So now connecting this all back to what's happening right now, because again, we have four Italian guys who were arrested. Let me see. Let's keep reading. Calamucci and his associates, who included several current or former members of Italian police forces, managed to hack individual. So it tells you right there, Calamucci and his associates. That doesn't mean they're all employees of Equalize, but it says included several current or former members of Italian police forces. So he has people on the inside, and then he has people who are probably retired. Managed to hack individual phones and devices and gain access to police and institutional databases. Well, how would they do that? Well, there's a software called Pegasus that the NSO group from Israel created that does exactly what they just described, which is hack into phones and gain access to and extract data. So again, if these guys are working at the very least in collaboration with Mossad would then give them access to this software that could then let them do this, right? But again, you can't use Pegasus without the permission of the Israeli government. Like that's kind of the kicker here. That's what nobody's saying out loud. It says their prices range from 250 euros to hack a personal phone to tens of thousands of euros for a dossier on a specific individual. The targets of Equalize's operations, at times in cooperation with additional companies specializing in security services, included Italian President Sergio Mattarella, Ignacio La Russa, President of the Italian Senate, prominent political leader Matteo Renzi, singer Alex Britti, and 2020 Olympic 100 meters champion Marcel Jacobs. Police found 800,000 dossiers in the company's vault. So they had put together 800,000 dossiers. That's pretty crazy. This also kind of makes you remember like Russiagate. Remember Russiagate? That's kind of exactly what was happening here, where they went and they hired that British spy, whatever that guy's name was, to put together a dossier. Apparently, this is kind of standard procedure in this industry. It says on February 8th, 2023, again, so now we're going back in time almost 2 years from before this article was written, a year and a half, really, 3 months before the boat sinks, right? Two unidentified Israeli agents visited the Equalize office and were photographed by Carabinieri, who were surveilling the company. The Corriere Della Sera reported on Tuesday. Okay, so right there, they are placing the guys involved in this scandal in Milan on February 8th, 2023. So they are now putting those guys for us in Milan 3 months before the boat sinks, and the boat sinks just a few miles away in Lake Maggiore, which is just a few miles north of Milan. It says the previous day, Calamucci had a conversation about an upcoming meeting with a partner, unaware that the police had already wiretapped his phone. They offered me a €1 million job, Calamucci said. According to the police, the Italian police report, the Israeli agents requested that the firm provide about the Russian militia Wagner Group, including its funding and financial activities within Europe. Additionally, they discussed information about Russian cyber attacks, which were conducted by hackers close to the Russian authorities, and the funding of Russian interests in the old continent, referring to Europe. Calamucci highlighted that the Israelis were acting not only on their behalf, but also on the behalf of additional intelligence agencies. During the phone call, the Italian hacker mentioned the Vatican. Quote, they are using half of the data to fight Wagner while they are giving the other half to the Vatican. So now we got the Vatican potentially implicated, he said. Vinciza or Enzo de Marzio, a former carabinieri. So this carabinieri word, I'm pretty sure this is a word. Means it's like Italian intelligence. Yeah, so the Carabinieri are the national gendarmerie of Italy, who primarily carry out domestic and foreign policing duties. It is one of Italy's main law enforcement agencies. Yeah, so this is basically like the FBI. It kind of sounds like they're something between the FBI and the CIA, something like that. The NSA, something like that. Okay, so Enzo de Marzio, who's a former, Italian FBI agent, allegedly facilitated the initial contact between the Israelis and the Italian hackers. In a wiretapped call, he explained to Calamucci that he first became acquainted with them while serving at the Italian embassy in Tel Aviv. Oh, look at that. So this guy was Italian intelligence, Italian police, whatever the word is. He's working at the Italian embassy in Tel Aviv. He says they have given us $40K until now through Enzo, Calamucci said, according to the Italian police. The Italian investigators wrote in their report that De Marzio provided the group with contacts, foreign intelligence, and very high-profile clients. According to the police documents, which include thousands of pages, the Israeli agents also offered to share with the Italian firm information about the illicit traffic of Iranian gas in Italy. This information could be of interest to a different client of Equalize, the Italian energy giant Eni, which in a statement denied any knowledge of any illegal activity by the firm. All right, so now we got to put Eni on the mind map, because Eni, you're now implicated in this. Italian political leaders expressed concerns. Several Italian political leaders have expressed their concerns as more details about the snooping ring have emerged day after day, intruding into people's lives, private lives, and then using the information for financial or political purposes is a threat to democracy. Yeah, we've already read that. That was Tajani who said that. Yeah. So, and then, Giorgia Meloni comes out and condemns this. She was being targeted in this, of course. So as it relates to this specific incident, these people who are being arrested, they're going after the Wagner Group. They're going after the Russians. They're going after Putin. They're going after and then Iran is now also connected. So it says right here, they were like, in exchange for this information, this sensitive information they gave the firm information about the illicit trafficking of Iranian gas in Italy, which is then going to be passed off to one of their other clients, a giant energy firm. And then you have David Barnea. So again, this article we just read is from a year and a half ago, October 2024. So now let's fast forward to today's article, right? Mossad agent Mim, who died in 2023, contributed to Iran war success. Spy chief reveals. So was that Iran war success? The stealing of, the acquisition of this intelligence on the illicit gas that's being traded by Iran, that's then being traded in spycraft with this private Italian intelligence firm. That's what I think is happening. I mean, again, we can't really see the fine details of this, but you can kind of see the broad strokes. This is all connected. All this is connected. And what it does is it implicates Mossad now directly into a scandal that is specifically targeting the Wagner Group and Putin. Because Putin, there's another article, we don't need to read through every single article about this, but there's another article that explicitly states that Putin was being targeted by this operation. Of Putin and Maloney, because Maloney's being targeted, Putin is being targeted, the Wagner Group is being targeted, and this is all part of a bigger conflict, as it's being told to us. It's all part of a bigger conflict that is between Russia and Europe. That would be the Ukraine war, and between Iran and Israel, which we're now seeing play out in real time. Let's see. So there's Maloney. Yeah, so there's this other Ynet, which is a Israeli. I think this is the largest Israeli news site. This is again from October 30th, 2024. A similar article to what we just read through, except it specifies that the target of this operation was Prigozhin, the former leader of the Wagner Group. That's who was being targeted. Okay, so that kind of takes us to the top of the hour. So let's take a minute and reset. Take a break. We'll come back. We'll reset, and we'll keep going.
In a quiet town where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jadriet's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
you boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
Shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard. Because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
Hey, have you checked out the Badlands shop lately? You might be surprised by what you've been missing, from thoughtful gifts and unique finds to everyday household essentials and personal care must-haves. There's truly something special for everyone at the Badlands shop. But here's what makes it different. Every single purchase you make is so much more than just buying stuff. You're investing directly in the movement. You're empowering America First businesses, lifting up fellow Badlanders, and supporting the creators who are building this community with us. Thank you for being part of this. Your support means everything. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/shop or click shop on the main menu at the badlandsmedia.tv site and discover your new favorite brands. That's badlandsmedia.tv/shop.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right, we are back. Hour 2 of the show. This is April 21st, 2026. Geopolitical Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of Dave Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media. Okay, so we left off with Italy. We were talking about Italy and Italy's involvement in all of this. And I think we went recently, like a week or two ago, we went back and discussed the connections between Giorgia Meloni, her deputy prime minister, Matteo Salvini, and Russia, and how Rosneft, the Russian energy company, had allegedly invested a bunch of money to basically fund Salvini's political campaign in 2018, which was a copy-paste campaign of the 2016 Trump MAGA campaign, right down to like the branding and the signage. So there are connections between Russia and Meloni. 10-4 can't count. I got it. So that again, I think would reinforce like the interest that Mossad has in the connection between Meloni, the Italian government, and the Kremlin, right? So now that brings us to, let's see. Well, don't want to do that yet. Well, maybe I do. Let's bring it up. So that brings us to this article, which I don't think we got a chance to speak about this last week. We maybe mentioned it in passing, but now we can go back and look at it because now it makes a lot more sense in context, right? Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni criticizes Israel's military campaign in Lebanon. In light of the current situation, they are suspending the defense agreement. So the way this agreement works says the agreement ratified in 2005 it ratified in 2005 and previously renewed every 5 years, includes cooperation in the defense industry and procurement policy, military equipment imports and exports, technical data exchanges, and personnel training. And it sounds like this thing automatically renewed every 5 years. And so now they're just saying, all right, we're not renewing it now. Like this time, we're done. Okay. It says last week, Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, remember he was quoted in the 2004 article about the spying scandal, summoned the Israeli ambassador to Rome, Jonathan Peled. Am I saying that right? Peled? After Israeli troops fired warning shots at an Italian peacekeeping convoy outside of Beirut. Meloni described the incident as completely unacceptable. On Monday, Tajani condemned the unacceptable attacks by Israel against the civilian population in Lebanon, to which the Israeli Foreign Ministry responded by summoning the Italian envoy. Several European countries have formally recognized Palestinian statehood and imposed full or partial embargoes on weapons sales to Israel since 2023. Last year, Spain canceled a number of contracts with Israeli arms manufacturers, reportedly totaling $1.18 billion. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez described the Israeli campaign in Gaza as genocide, a claim Israel denied. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has argued that his country is defending Europe by waging wars against Iran, Hamas, and the Lebanon-based pro-Palestinian armed group Hezbollah. In a speech on Tuesday, Netanyahu accused European countries of deep moral weakness for not supporting Israel. Okay, so yeah, we have that connection. And then it might be worth noting the Sanchez thing real quick. So this is from April 11th. Israel punishes EU nation over defaming IDF heroes. The move comes after Madrid accused Israel of breaching a ceasefire with indiscriminate bombings in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has lashed out at Spain over what he described as repeated opposition to Israel and the defaming of the military after Madrid slammed the IDF over recent strikes in Lebanon. In a video address on Friday, Netanyahu said he ordered Spain's expulsion from the U.S.-backed coordination center in Kiryat Gat that oversees the Gaza ceasefire, calling it punishment for opposing Israel. Quote, Israel will not remain silent in the face of those who attack us. Spain has defamed our heroes, IDF soldiers, the soldiers of the most moral army in the world. Netanyahu said Spain has chosen repeatedly to stand against Israel. I do not intend to allow any country to wage a diplomatic war against us without paying an immediate price. Spanish officials, including Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, have been among the most vocal critics of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, warning that further escalation would bring severe humanitarian and economic consequences. Last month, Spain closed its airspace to U.S. aircraft linked to the war and permanently withdrew its ambassador from Israel, downgrading ties. So again, this is like Israel is being boxed out, right? Like Israel is being boxed out by its traditional allies. Traditional ally has always been Europe and the United States. That's always been the traditional ally of Israel. And now it's getting boxed out by the EU. As, you know, I think Israel sees the Ukraine war against Russia as like one and the same as the war against Iran. And of course, the war against Russia and Ukraine is being fought by Europe. So on that same vein, we can go to this article. This is from the Times of Israel. 40 Israelis, this is from yesterday, 40 Israelis detained at Moscow airport reportedly over war with Iran. Israel confirms incident, says it immediately contacted Russian authorities to secure release of travelers who say they were told that an enemy of Tehran is an enemy of our enemy as well. At least 40 Israeli citizens were detained and later released after arriving at a Moscow airport from Tel Aviv on Sunday, the foreign ministry confirmed following a Russian report on the incident. The travelers were reportedly held on suspicion of having ties to Israel's war against Russia's ally, Iran. Security forces at Domodedovo airport reportedly stressed to the detainees that Iran is an ally of Russia and that anyone who is an enemy of Iran is our enemy as well. Immediately upon learning of the incident at the instruction of Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, the foreign ministry acted both with the foreign ministry in Moscow and with the Russian embassy in Israel. The ministry said in a statement on Monday, following this intervention, the incident was resolved and the Israelis' entry was approved. The Russians were made to understand that this conduct is completely unacceptable and Israel views the incident with great seriousness, the ministry added. While the ministry could not address other details of the detention, a source familiar with the incident told the independent Russian outlet Media Zone that the travelers were interrogated by Russian security forces on suspicion of being involved in Israel's war against Iran and held for 5 hours without access to food, water, or restrooms. Those detained, among whom were both dual citizens and Israelis without Russian passports, were reportedly told to unlock their phones. When the Israelis refused, they were told to turn them off instead, the report said, because they were worried about the conversations being recorded. Domodedovo Airport, that is a mouthful, was the scene of an incident in 2019. I remember this, when several Israelis were denied entry into Russia in a spat over bilateral visa agreement. On that occasion, they were eventually permitted to continue their journey. Israel and the U.S. launched their campaign against Iran. Yeah, that just gives you the background on the Iran war. Domodedovo Airport. Is that the one that is in Dagestan? Let me see real quick. Let's see. Images. Let's pull this up on the map real quick. Just give me 1 second. This probably isn't what I think it is, but if it is, then that just makes it really, really interesting. Okay, so I just wanted to see if that was the one in Dagestan. I don't think it is, because remember in Dagestan after like the October 7th attack, there were all those Israelis who were stopped. I think it was like in 2024, 2023 maybe, no, like end of 2023. And then and it was like an allegation of anti-Semitism because Dagestan is a Muslim. Anyway, it's like is a Muslim country, a Muslim republic within Russia. Anyway, so this is, I think what this is Moscow. Of course it's Moscow. It said that in the article. So it's south of Moscow. Anyway, so this is like more evidence, like you're seeing Israel just being isolated more and more and more and more and more. It's being isolated. And we have another instance of this happening. Here's, excuse me, Politico. Hungary must arrest Netanyahu if he visits, Magyar says. So you'll recall that Viktor Orban was in office. This is the prime minister of Hungary, former prime minister of Hungary, in office in Hungary for 16 years. Loses an election last week, I think it was, to this guy, Peter Magyar. And what I've seen written about Magyar by like left-wing outlets and, you know, globalist outlets and all that stuff is that Magyar is basically a Viktor Orban, like his politics align almost exactly with Viktor Orban, right? I've also seen Ben Harnwell. I think is it Ben Harnwell, one of Bannon's reporters, the guy in Italy, whose name escapes me. He also said the same thing, like the day after he was elected. He said, let's just wait and see. Magyar might be a continuation of Orban, but let's just wait and see. He definitely has skeletons in his closet, and that's concerning, but let's see. So this article says, what the article says, I'll just summarize it so we don't waste a lot of time reading it, is that this guy calls Netanyahu to invite him to Hungary. It says right here, asked by reporters what this would mean for Netanyahu's planned visit this fall. He has already accepted Hungary's invite. Magyar said, I made this clear to the Israeli prime minister as well. It is the Tiza government's firm intention to stop this and ensure that Hungary remains a member of the ICC. And when he says stop this, is the fact that Viktor Orban began the process of Hungary leaving the ICC. The ICC is the International Criminal Court. It was founded by George Soros in like 2002. It's definitely completely illegitimate. And it's basically used to target like African warlords and people who are non-compliant with the unipolar hegemony. When they first indicted Netanyahu back in 2024, I think it was, maybe the end of 2023, there was like widespread outrage because they were like, the ICC is not supposed to go after quote unquote first world leaders. It's supposed to go after, you know, Russian oligarchs and African warlords. And so Viktor Orban had begun the process of leaving the ICC, right? And then now Peter Magyar saying, we're going to reverse that. Like we're reversing that because it says right here, prior to the meeting, Orban announced, says said Hungary had previously refused to arrest the Israeli leader when he visited Budapest in April 2025, with staunch Netanyahu ally Viktor Orban serving as the prime minister. Prior to the meeting, Orban announced Hungary's withdrawal from the ICC, a process that takes 1 year to take effect under the court statute and guaranteed Netanyahu immunity. So that means that next month, or maybe this month, it's April right now, this was about to be finalized. This was about to be a final, like they're out of the ICC. Peter Magyar is now reversing that. And he says, if a country is a member of the ICC and a person who is wanted by the ICC enters our territory, then that person must be taken into custody. Some countries, however, have argued that they can remain ICC members without enforcing such warrants. So again, that kind of like the legitimacy of the ICC is being challenged there. But again, like what this is this is just more isolation. And you saw how angry they got at Spain for what Spain did and how they overreacted to that. So they're going to overreact to all this stuff. Them meaning the Israeli government. They're just like blinded by hubris. And so like if Magyar is very similar to Viktor Orban, an obvious major difference is that he's not a Zionist and he's not like pro Netanyahu. So basically Netanyahu just lost a major ally in Europe, Viktor Orban, Hungary. And now it's been replaced by a guy who purportedly is a populist right. We'll see if he actually is. But he certainly has a positive view of like the EU and those kind of organizations, which I don't think is a very populist position. However, that could all just be part of like an anti-Israel, anti-Zionist stance. That would put him, though, like his attitude towards Netanyahu and towards Israel would put him deeper into Russia's camp than Viktor Orban was. Like I would argue that. So we'll see what happens there. But this is just more evidence of the isolation. Okay, so now we can go to, let's stay in Europe, stay in the EU. Oh, wait, you know what? Before we do that, there is this article that from Africa, and because this is the Eastern DRC, all right, I only have like 20 more minutes, and then I gotta end a little early today, so I'll go as fast as I can here. Joint African Military Force rescues 200 teens, from militants. Ugandan and Congolese troops have rescued more than 200 teenagers from captivity after raiding a camp run by the Islamic State-linked Allied Democratic Forces in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The authorities said on Sunday the abductees were freed last week during an offensive along the river Epulu. The Ugandan People's Defense Forces said in a press release, several militants were killed and weapons seized during the joint operation at the camp, which the army said was under the control of the notorious ADF commander Sizbagala, also known as MZ Mayer. Among those rescued was a 14-year-old girl, the youngest, while the oldest was a 19-year-old boy. Many recounted harsh conditions in captivity, including lack of food, forced labor, and punishment for disobedience. The army added that several were in poor condition and appeared to be suffering from untreated illnesses, including malaria, respiratory infections, and physical exhaustion. The ADF, originally a Ugandan Islamist group, has waged a violent insurgency in conflict-torn Eastern Congo for decades and pledged allegiance to ISIS in 2019. It has since become one of the deadliest armed groups operating in the region, and its fighters have been blamed for massacres, kidnappings, and bombings. Ugandan and Congolese forces launched Operation Shuja in late 2021 to counter the ADF threat after a wave of deadly bombings and cross-border attacks, but the group has continued to stage deadly attacks. And then he just goes on to give a little more history. But what's interesting here is that my theory that I've had for a few years now is that when Trump targeted Dan Gertler, right, in 2017 with, Executive Order 13818, or I'm sorry, 13818, I think it's what it is. 13818. He was going after the Israeli oligarchs war chest, because Dan Gertler was their access point into Eastern Congo, where there's $24 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, right? Most of the world's rare earth minerals come out of that river valley, or that area. And so there's been, obviously, we've documented on this show for years now, there was a conflict back and forth between two groups, ostensibly, right? One group represented, I think, by Dan Gertler and Mossad, was trying to overthrow the DR Congo government, and the other group represented, I think, in my opinion, by Donald Trump and President Tshisekedi, who's the current president of the DR Congo. They're obviously pushing back against that, and so the Wagner Group has been operating in all over Africa, but mainly in northern Africa, training up these militias and training up these militaries to fight ISIS and to fight these insurgencies. And then the story that we just did of Mossad going to Italy and trying to hack into this server and buy information on the Wagner Group. I can't help but wonder, are they trying to track down like how the Wagner Group is operating financially and otherwise for their operations in Africa, because they want to cut off Wagner in Africa, because the Wagner Group is threatening their cash flow. Like they want to use their proxies, which include M23, which include these ISIS groups in the Uganda. Both Uganda and Rwanda traditionally loyal to Israel. Like, do they want to use those groups to retake control of these mines, which I think they've already done to some extent. I think all this connected. All this feels connected to me, but again, I need to get more data to strengthen that connection. All right, so let's go to, I think we'll probably end it here with this story. This is interesting. EU arms spending European Union arms spending is a magnet for criminals, according to the anti-fraud chief. Massive funding for military buildup raises corruption risks. The head of watchdog Olaf warns the billions of euros slated by the EU for the buildup of weapons factories and procurement of military hardware are a magnet for the criminals. According to a senior anti-fraud official, the EU's defense industry has issues with manipulation with public tenders, blown up prices, clientelism, and corruption. European anti-fraud offices, OLAF for short, Director General Peter Clement said, as quoted by the Financial Times on Monday, Brussels is pushing for a rapid military buildup financed through borrowing some 150 billion euro in preparation for a hypothetical war with Russia. Moscow calls the move a diversion from the EU's plummeting living standards based on false claims of an imminent threat. Quote, this is not shaming certain countries or segments. This is simply how it's been working for decades, Clement noted. The splurge comes just as the EU is facing prolonged economic slowdown linked in part to its political decision to phase out Russian energy imports. Energy-intensive export-oriented industries such as Germany's automotive manufacturing have been hit particularly hard. Producers are now shifting towards government-paid defense contracts. Germany, which Berlin estimates receives nearly 90% of European venture capital in defense technology, is reinventing itself as a weapons factory. The Wall Street Journal reported on Sunday, citing examples of firms benefiting from the transition. Klaus Rosenfield, CEO of automotive supplier Schaeffler, rebuked business owners who engaged in a lot of whining, saying firms must instead roll up our sleeves. Originally founded during post-World War II reconstruction, the Bavaria-based company is pivoting to products such as drone engines and onboard systems for armored vehicles, targeting to get at least 10% of their turnover from the weapons sector. Other firms are making similar moves. Veteran combustion engine manufacturer Deutz has reported 15% revenue growth in 2025 after investing in military startups. Volkswagen is negotiating to produce components for Israel's Iron Dome system. Legacy arms contractor Rheinmetall is facing tough competition from newcomers Helsing and Stark to supply loitering munitions to rearm the German military. So what has happened here is Trump said no more, like we're cutting off no more freebies. We're not giving you any more free aid. We're not giving you any more free munitions or free weapons or any of that stuff. If you want that, you can buy it. You can buy it from us. And so then the EU then shifted, or NATO rather, shifted to a model of buying all this stuff, like buying the weapons that it's using in Ukraine against Russia from the US and from others. And now this is the EU, a separate organization, right, trying to build up its own continental army. And so raising $150 billion in capital, or billion euros rather in capital. And what that has done is that has, like flies descending on, rotting food, that's brought all the criminals out to basically plunder this war chest. They see opportunity for embezzlement. If you go in, like last night on the Book of Trump, I did the Wagner Group, right? And a big part of the Wagner Group was Ihor Kolomoisky, the Ukrainian oligarch who financed a lot of their growth. Kolomoisky is sitting in a jail cell right now, and my understanding is that a big reason for his imprisonment is because of this kind of fraud. He was basically embezzling. He started a bank, Privat bank, created like thousands of fake companies that were under the control of this bank, and then it turned out he was just laundering all this money, I think, through these companies. But then in 2014 he started buying weapons for not the Wagner Group. I'm sorry, we didn't do the Wagner Group last night. We did the Azov Battalion. Excuse me, I'm just getting my names mixed up. So the Azov Battalion, Kolomoisky was buying weapons for the Azov Battalion as well as the Donbass Battalion and other Ukrainian militias to fight Putin back in 2014. And I think that's what got him in trouble. I think he was doing a lot of the stuff that he was already doing before in the energy sector, in the aluminum sector, in the raw materials sector. But then he started doing it in the arms sector, and I think he got caught doing that. So anyway, I think this might end up being a giant honeypot of sorts that's going to, like, all these corrupt oligarchs throughout Europe are going to come out and try to siphon off money from this, and they're all going to get caught. I mean, we'll see, but I find all that very interesting. Here's and then connected to that is this. Where did that article go? Excuse me 1 second. I just had this pulled up and I wanted to. Yeah, here it is. So speak of the devil. I'm pretty sure. No, we did. No. So speak of the devil. Here's Matteo Salvini, Italian deputy prime minister, this is from 2 days ago, calls for a return to Russian energy imports. Matteo Salvini says lifting EU restrictions is key to averting an economic crisis. Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini has called on the EU to resume imports of Russian oil and gas, arguing that the bloc should prioritize energy security. The war in the Middle East has exacerbated Europe's energy crisis as disruptions to navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, a key route handling around 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas, have pushed oil prices up by as much as 70% since February. Speaking at a Patriots for Europe rally in Milan on Saturday, Salvini, the leader of Italy's Lega Party, argued that the EU Stability and Growth Pact, SGP, and the ideological monster called the Green Deal are holding back the economy. He called for the bloc's ban on Russian energy imports to be reversed. This is all fascinating. His quote is, to tackle the energy crisis, the rules of the Stability Pact must be suspended, and Italians' money must be used to help Italians in difficulty, he told supporters, urging Brussels to follow the U.S. and lift the sanctions, which are blocking the trade and purchase of Russian oil. The U.S. temporarily eased restrictions on certain Russian oil shipments after Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz to enemy ships in response to U.S. and Israeli strikes. A license initially allowed the sale of oil loaded on the tankers before March 12th through April 11th, and was extended on Friday to permit purchases of oil and petroleum products loaded as of that date until May 16th. Quote, if the U.S. is doing it, then Brussels should do the same. Rather than shutting down factories, schools, and hospitals, we should return to buying gas and oil from all over the world, including Russia. We are not at war with Russia, Salvini said. Yeah, and so like the the small little story that is being that was mentioned right there is that on Friday, see if we can pull that up right here. So this is from Friday. U.S. reverses on pledge not to renew Russian oil waiver. This might be from Saturday, actually. The U.S. has renewed a sanctions exemption allowing Russian crude and petroleum products already loaded onto tanks to be delivered and sold freely. The U.S. Treasury Department has announced the move came despite a pledge by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made 2 days prior to that the waiver would not be extended. On Friday, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, issued a general license covering Russian oil loaded onto vessels as of April 17th and authorizing transactions through May 16th. The waiver replaces an earlier 30-day order, which took effect on March 19th and extends to services including safe docking, crew safety, emergency repairs, and insurance, even for previously sanctioned vessels. The goal of the initial waiver was to contain the spike in oil prices caused by the Iran war and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The move came despite Bessent telling reporters on Wednesday that waivers on Russian and Iranian oil would not be extended. In late March, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed the notion of the waiver as meaningless. The U.S. graciously allowed the Russian Federation to sell its oil that was already at sea. He said tankers that are already at sea and heading to their destinations continue moving exactly as they did before. Basically, Lavrov being like, yeah, this is a non-story. But that's just Lavrov being Lavrov. Yeah, but the point is that interesting. War crime. Russian envoy denounces U.S.-Israeli war on Iran from Tehran rebel. Okay. So Russian envoy is talking about Israel committing a war crime in Iran. And then right here, Putin saying Russia knows how the Ukraine conflict will end. Moscow will continue pursuing its goals, the Russian president has said. Fascinating, fascinating. Well, we're gonna land it there, but that I think is how maybe we'll pick up talking about that on Friday, see what happens, see what develops. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up. We got a few Rumble rants. Garrett Keene, $5. Go showed up to the 100th episode this time. Congrats on 100, and thank you in advance for the next 100. Crushing it. Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate the support. Heather Jones, $20. 100 episodes of helping us all to replace the BS info propaganda in our brains with truth and history. Love you, Ghost. Well, thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. Appreciate y'all's support and generosity. Looks like Zigzag donated some Bitcoin, so appreciate the Bitcoin donation. Yeah, and so I'm going to go ahead and land it there. Got Mrs. Ghost calling me now, so let's cue the music, and we'll see y'all on Friday. I'll see you before that. We'll be back with Breaking History tomorrow with Matt Barrett. We'll have a great day.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.